It wasn't supposed to be this cramped. My husband had promised a comfortable ride. Plenty of room, he'd said, tossing his duffel bag into the trunk that morning. But standing at the edge of the driveway, facing his beat-up sedan, I knew that wasn't true. The back seat was cluttered with jackets, snack wrappers, and half-deflated pillows from his last solo trip to the lake. There were only 2 usable seats, the passenger side and 1 spot in the back. And 3 of us. "You can ride up front," I offered to his son, trying to keep my voice light. He hesitated, giving his father a quick glance, then shrugged. "Nah, it's cool. She can sit in the back with me." Before I could object, he was already climbing in. The only space left was directly on his lap. I stood frozen, the air still around me. My husband, oblivious, was already adjusting the GPS and plugging in his phone. "Let's go, babe. We're late as it is." So I got in, sat down. On him, the car lurched forward. At first, we didn't speak. My thighs balanced awkwardly on his. One of his arms pressed against the back of the seat, the other resting uncertainly by his side. I focused on the view, tree-lined roads rolling past, blurred by the speed, and my rising self-awareness. His body was firm beneath mine, too solid to ignore. The fabric of his jeans brushed my bare legs. Every bump in the road shifted us slightly, grinding small moments of contact that neither of us acknowledged. We hadn't been close before, not in any real way. He was polite but quiet around me, always watching his father like he was waiting for approval that never came. He was in college now, visiting only occasionally, but something in him had changed since the last time I saw him. He'd filled out. His voice had deepened. And now, with me practically sitting on his chest, I noticed it all at once. "Sorry," I muttered, adjusting my weight slightly. "It's okay," he said, his voice low. "You're light." I didn't answer. The heat from his skin crept through the thin fabric of my dress. I told myself to relax, to focus on the road, to breathe. But his hand brushed my hip when the car swerved slightly, steadying me, and it stayed there a second longer than it should have. Still, my husband didn't notice. He was too busy narrating traffic, complaining about road closures and Spotify ads. To him, we were just 3 passengers in a tight car. But I felt it, the slow, silent shift in gravity. Not between me and my husband. Between me and the boy behind me. And when I dared to glance into the rearview mirror, I saw his eyes looking back at mine. Not in accident, not in confusion. But like he already knew this was how it would begin. The cabin was quiet after sunset, wrapped in a hush that only came with distant woods and no cell signal. My husband had passed out early on the couch, a half-empty beer still in his hand, the sound of his breathing deep and indifferent. I tiptoed away, needing a moment alone. The kitchen light was off, but a sliver of moonlight spilled through the window, casting silver shadows across the tile. I wasn't expecting anyone to be there, but he was. Leaning against the counter, glass of water in hand, wearing only a loose t-shirt and sweatpants. He looked up when I entered, eyes alert, almost as if he'd been waiting. "Couldn't sleep?" I whispered. He shook his head. "Too quiet." I poured myself water and leaned back against the opposite counter. A long silence stretched between us, comfortable but thick, like we were both aware of something we didn't want to name. "I used to come here with my mom," he said suddenly, eyes still focused on the dark outside the window. "Before the divorce. Before Dad turned into whatever he is now." I glanced toward the living room. My husband, still asleep, still oblivious. "He doesn't see people," I said, before I could stop myself. He turned toward me. "You mean he doesn't see you?" I didn't answer. My throat tightened, not with emotion exactly, but with something close to recognition. "It's weird," he said, stepping closer. You've always been so nice. Kind. But it's like he doesn't notice." I gave a faint, dry laugh. "I think he likes me most when I'm quiet and useful, like a radio on low volume." His brow furrowed. "You deserve more than that." Another silence. This one heavier. We stood close now. Not touching but one step away from it. His eyes searched mine like he was looking for something he wasn't sure I wanted to give. Or maybe something he hoped I already had. I don't know why I'm saying all this, he said, suddenly looking down. It's probably not okay. It is, I said quietly. It's okay. He looked up again, and the expression in his eyes, hesitant, raw, caught me off guard. It wasn't desire, not yet. It was understanding. The kind that comes when someone sees a version of you no one else bothers to ask about. He reached out, gently, and his fingers touched mine on the countertop. A whisper of contact. No more than that. But my body felt it like thunder. We didn't kiss. We didn't move. But we didn't need to. That one shared moment, in the dark of a cabin, with the world asleep around us, that was the first real betrayal. Not with our bodies. With our silence. Morning came with the soft hum of wind through trees and the distant buzz of someone chopping firewood nearby. My husband had already left for a hike with one of his cousins, early risers, both of them, leaving me alone in the cabin. Or so I thought. I stepped into the kitchen in an oversized sweater, hair still damp from the shower, and froze. He was there again, sitting at the edge of the table, shirtless, flipping through a magazine he clearly wasn't reading. Didn't know you stayed behind, I said, trying to sound casual. He looked up. Didn't feel like hiking. I nodded, poured myself some coffee, and tried to focus on the steam rising from the mug. But every movement felt deliberate. Every glance lasted just a second too long. I'm gonna go finish getting ready, I said, already turning. But as I opened the bathroom door, I realized I'd forgotten my towel. Again. Hey, I called out. Could you toss me that? Too late. He was already there. He stepped into the doorway, towel in hand, eyes meeting mine. I stood in nothing but a thin shirt and underwear. Nothing inappropriate, nothing planned, but still, I felt stripped bare under his gaze. His jaw tightened slightly. He held out the towel. I reached for it, but our hands touched again. This time, neither of us pulled away. I should go, I whispered, barely audible. He didn't answer. He stepped forward. And then it happened, quietly, slowly, like a decision that had been waiting to be made. His lips met mine. Soft. Careful. Hesitant. I should have stopped it, but I kissed him back. His hands moved to my hips, tentative, as if still unsure if this was real. My body leaned into his instinctively, without permission. Our mouths moved together with growing urgency, years of silence and dismissal unraveling in one reckless moment. We didn't speak. We didn't need to. He lifted me gently, carried me to the bedroom, and laid me down like I was something fragile. And in those minutes, those charged, trembling, forbidden minutes, I didn't think about my husband or right or wrong. I thought about how seen I felt. How wanted. We didn't go all the way. Something in both of us pulled back just before the edge. But the line had already been crossed. My hands had traced parts of him I shouldn't have touched. His lips had memorized the shape of a vow I never meant to break. Afterward, we sat in silence. I stared at the floor. He stared at me. I'm sorry, he said, voice thick. I nodded. Tears slid down my cheeks, quiet, unannounced. Not because I regretted it, but because I didn't. The drive home felt longer than it had on the way there. The roads were the same, winding through pine trees and long stretches of highway, but the silence in the car had changed. It was no longer casual or passive. It was loaded. My husband insisted I take the front seat this time. You've had enough of the back, he joked, unaware of the weight that single sentence carried. But I declined, forcing a tired smile, and slid into the rear. Beside him, he shifted to make space. I folded my hands in my lap. Our knees barely touched, but my skin still remembered his fingers, his breath, his mouth. And from the way his eyes flicked toward me and back again, I knew he remembered too. My husband rambled on about the hike, about some old friend he ran into, about a podcast he wanted us to listen to. He talked like a man completely unaware that the foundation of something had already cracked beneath his feet. I gave him half-hearted nods and polite MHMs, but my mind wasn't there. It was back in the cabin. in the dim kitchen light, in the moment my body betrayed my marriage without hesitation. I glanced at the boy, my husband's son. His gaze was fixed out the window, expression unreadable. But when our shoulders brushed slightly as we turned on a bend, he didn't move away. He didn't flinch. And neither did I. I don't know what I expected in the aftermath. Guilt? Regret? Maybe even disgust? But what I felt was quieter. Heavier. Something like grief, for the years I'd spent being invisible. For all the times I had smiled while shrinking inside. For the version of me that had begged, silently, to be noticed. This boy, young, reckless, too close, had seen me. Not for who I pretended to be, but for who I was when I wasn't afraid to want something. Still, it didn't change the truth. I had crossed a line I couldn't uncross. And I couldn't speak it out loud. Neither could he. At a red light, I glanced toward the rear-view mirror. My husband was humming to himself, tapping the steering wheel. The mirror shifted slightly, and in it, I caught his son watching me again. Our eyes met for half a second. No words, no expression, but everything that mattered was there. Not in desire anymore, not in longing, but in the quiet understanding that what had happened would follow us, unspoken, unresolved, through every family dinner, every forced smile, every hollow laugh. My husband would never know, but we would. Every time our eyes met across a room, every time our hands passed something too carefully, we'd both remember that one night, the one that changed everything without making a sound. Infidelity doesn't always leave marks on the body. Sometimes it leaves them in the silence between two people who can never tell the truth.